Combined Science Foundation, Predicted Topics for Paper 2, AQA GCSE Chemistry Exam 2024. The first topic is the rate of reaction, graphs, and factors affecting reaction rate. You should know how to calculate the rate of the reaction from a graph or data provided. Normally, they will ask you to calculate the average the rate of the reaction between 2 points of time, and they will give you the change in the reactants or the change in the product. So the rate will be the change in reactants in gram over time in second, or the change in products in gram over time in second. You should know the different factors affecting rate with explanation in terms of collisions. So higher temperature, higher concentration for solutions, higher pressure in case of gases only, and the surface area to volume ratio, increase in the surface area to the volume ratio. All of these will increase the rate of the reaction because of the increase of the rate of collisions. The use of catalyst also increases the rate of the reaction, but this is due to the lowering of the activation energy of the reaction, which means because catalysts provide an alternative pathway for the reaction. You should be able to identify the activation energy for the use of the catalyst, which is this part. This is in comparison with the activation energy without the catalyst, which is the longer one. Reversible reactions and position of equilibrium. You should be able to identify a reversible reaction and why a reaction is reversible. This is due to the use of these arrows, and you should know what is meant by equilibrium and when equilibrium is reached. Equilibrium is reached when the concentration of reactants and products are constant. They are not the same, they are just constant, and the rate of the forward and reverse reaction are the same. You should know that if one direction of a reversible reaction is exothermic, the opposite is endothermic. So if the forward reaction is exothermic, then the reverse will be endothermic. And you should know that changing the condition could change the position of equilibrium either towards the reactants or towards the products. Organic chemistry, hydrocarbon, you should be able to write a balanced equation for complete or incomplete combustion. Remember that complete combustion will produce carbon dioxide and water, and also there will be heat, so alkanes can be used as fuel. You should know the general formula for alkanes, which is CnH2n plus 2. You should be able to name the first four members of alkanes, which are methane, and then ethane, then propane, and then butane for four carbon atoms. You should be able to describe the increase in the boiling point and viscosity of alkanes with increased size, and you should know also that flammability decreases with the increase in the size. Should be able to describe the fractional distillation of crude oils in terms of heating, evaporating, and then the condensation. You should know that the crude oil was formed from plankton, and you should know that cracking is the process of breaking down the longer chain hydrocarbon to form shorter chain hydrocarbon and another product called alkene. So you should be able to balance an equation for cracking, and you should know the condition for cracking at least one of these, which are high temperature and then in addition to the use of a catalyst in case of catalytic cracking, or in addition to the use of steam in case of the thermal cracking. You should know why cracking of long chain hydrocarbon is needed, and this is because it produces more of the shorter chain hydrocarbons, which are used as fuel or more useful. You should know the test for the double bond, which is called the bromine water test, and you should identify the color change, which changes from orange to colorless in case of the presence of double bond. Chemical analysis. You should know what is a pure substance, which is substance has nothing added to it, and what is a formulation, and you should identify a certain substance as a formulation. So a formulation is something that has several components added to it in a specific quantities to serve a certain purpose. Something like the drugs you take or the medicine you take, these are formulation. The detergents you use could be a formulation. Anything like that that has several different components would be a formulation. You should know the chemical tests for gases, hydrogen, oxygen, chlorine, and carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is probably the most common in your exam, but any of these four tests could come show up in the exam as well. Paper, paper chromatography is very common in the exam. You should know how to identify possible mistakes in paper chromatography. The most common one is the drawing the start line in ink instead of using a pencil, and the solvent level is above the start line. You should be able to calculate the RF value for any spot or for any of the component from the paper chromatography. The equation for the calculation of the RF will be given in the exam. You should be able to make conclusions about an experiment regarding the paper chromatography. So how many substances are there in the sample, why, which dyes or color present, and why a spot is staying at the start line and it didn't move. Of course, this is because this particular dye is not soluble in the solvent used. Gases in the atmosphere. You should know the sources of the greenhouse gases on Earth, which are carbon dioxide and methane. You should know the effect of greenhouse gases on the average Earth temperature, which causes an increase in the temperature and climate change. You should identify the different atmospheric pollutants from fuel. These are mainly carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, which comes from the oxidation of sulfur or burning fuel because fuel contains sulfur, water vapors, of course, and nitrogen oxides as well. And you should know their effects. Remember that carbon dioxide causes global climate change, and then sulfur dioxide causes acid rain and respiratory problems. And then nitrogen oxides also cause acid rain and respiratory problems. You should know the changes in the different gases on Earth over time, where nitrogen increased due to volcanic activity, carbon dioxide decreased as it dissolved in oceans and it made sedimentary rocks, and also due to photosynthesis, and then oxygen increased due to the photosynthesis. Topic 6, using resources. You should be able to define what is a finite resource and what is a renewable resource, or identify which resource is finite and which one is renewable. Potable water is very common for both fresh water and salty water. Remember that fresh water, it's easier to get the potable water from fresh water because fresh water can be treated by filtrations through sand filters and then sterilized to kill microbes using chlorine, UV, or ozone. While the salty water, we use a process called desalination, and desalination can be achieved either through distillation or reverse osmosis. Both of these require a lot of energy. You should know all the four stages of wastewater treatment. The first stage being the screening and grit removal. The second stage is sedimentation to produce sewage sludge and effluent. The third stage is the aerobic digestion of sewage sludge, anaerobic digestion of sewage sludge, and then the aerobic biological treatment of the effluent. So these are the four stages. You should be able to identify the advantages and disadvantages of a certain product from its life cycle assessment data, and you should know the life cycle assessment stages in order. So first the raw material, and then the production of the product, and then the usage, and finally the disposal. You should be able to identify the different variables in any experiment. Remember that the independent variable is the one that you change yourself in the experiment. The dependent variable is the one that changes when the independent variable is changed. And then control variables are the ones that are kept the same in the experiment when you change the independent variable and then measure the dependent one.